I mean, it looks completely current. What a sexy looking car.
What a funny little nugget, and in some ways way ahead of its time, and as far as Honda reliability goes, well, maybe not.
This feels like what the original engineers of the CRX would have wanted the car to feel like 20 years on. Okay, what a weird and interesting little car the Honda CRZ is. Interestingly, when these were brand spanking new, the world's motoring press absolutely loved them. They raved about the driving experience. What about now? The most recent local examples are at least 10 years old. How are they aging? Are they still amazing to drive? What do they like to live with? Most importantly, should you buy one? We're going to answer all of those questions, and we're going to take you through all the need to know stuff about the CRZ. But first of all, what goes wrong with them? Let's start with the exterior. First of all, and this is arguably the most common issue with the exterior, it's the bloody door handles. Now, especially in hot climates, the door handles can just get hard to use, or they just stop working altogether. Now, the good news is these are pretty cheap and easy to fix. You're looking at about a couple $100 for the part, and it is a fun do-it-yourself project. Hot tip, jump on the owners groups because there are loads of great tutorials and advice on there. Next up, the door lock actuators, and especially the tailgate boot lock. These can be an issue. It's not a majorly common issue, but it does happen. Again, pretty cheap and easy to fix. Next up, the paint. Now, this is typical 2000s Honda paint here. It is a bit on the thin side, as is the clear coat. Especially check the bonnet, the roof, and the tailgate, because there are signs or reports that it can fade. If the car has been garaged and cared for all the time, it might be okay. If it hasn't, And then, and this is especially in colder climates with salted roads, a few owners are finding some corrosion and rust issues around the rear wheel arches. Luckily here in Australia, probably not going to be a problem. Then when we come to the very cool shark fin antenna, there are some reports that these can come loose and worst case scenario, fly off. Also, if they come loose, water can drip inside there. Good news here, to drop the headlining down is super easy. It's one screw to tighten it up, fixes the problem. The rear lights can build condensation, but not a common problem. And then the front lights, like so many headlights from this era, they can get milky or yellow. Also, unfortunately, if you break these, they can be very expensive to replace. Actually, this can be an issue with the entire car. The parts are becoming rare and therefore expensive. Also, because they didn't sell in very high numbers, your local wreckers probably won't have many parts lying around. And apparently Honda Australia, they do ask a premium for many parts. Plus, owners have reported that they've had to wait weeks for parts to turn up. But here's the hot tip. Owners have reported that if you buy the parts directly from Honda in Japan or Honda in the US, the parts are generally cheaper and they turn up faster as well. However, unfortunately, because so many owners don't know about the getting parts cheap hack, many people, if they have an accident, try to cut corners and save money when it comes to repairing the car. That's why it is absolutely critical that you get a full pre-purchase inspection carried out and get yourself a vehicle history check at ReDriven.com or via the link below. That's going to tell you if there's any money owing on the car, if it's been written off, or if it's stolen. Now, another thing with the exterior that I completely forgot about until picking the car up is just how small these are. Fun fact, it basically takes up the same footprint as the current Mazda MX-5. This is about that much longer, and it's obviously taller as well, but yeah, it's a very, very small package. But look, design-wise, personally, I absolutely love this car. It does help that this is a 2013 model, so it's the post-update, so it has 17-inch wheels instead of the 16s pre-update. And obviously it's the spiritual successor to the iconic CRX of the 80s and 90s. And I think Honda have nailed it for design. I think it still looks pretty bloody current. They've done such a great job with it. Also, I love that Honda have actually taken a design risk with it. Brilliant. Also, if you maybe lower it just a little bit and proving that every car can look fantastic on a set of Enkei RP F1s, have a look at this. I mean, it looks completely current. What a sexy looking car. Also, annoyingly, we missed out on arguably the sexiest of all of the CRZs, which was the 2015 update. And you know why? It's your fault. No one bought them. In the last year of availability here in Australia, Honda just sold 69. But despite that, it's really important to understand just how ahead of its time this car was. Firstly, it's a small two-door sports car with a 1.5 litre hybrid with either a manual or CVT. That's the sort of recipe that we're only just starting to see become popular in cars now. This thing first landed on our shores back in 2011. However, it is important to understand that hybrid powertrains were nowhere near as advanced back then as they are now. Initially, the power on offer and therefore acceleration times weren't exactly mind-blowing. And even though power increased with an update in 2013 when the battery switched from nickel metal hydride to lithium ion, the CRZ still wasn't the go-to contender when it came to a traffic light Grand Prix. Interestingly, Honda Japan listened to the request for more power and created a supercharged and accessory-laden Mugen model, which I actually saw at the 2010 Sydney Motor Show. Honda America loved this concept, and for their 2013 and 2014 manual models offered the HPD supercharger kit and accessories. This slashed the acceleration times and makes me wonder how hard it would be to fit that supercharger kit to one of these now. Unfortunately, being so ahead of its time didn't do much for buyers' confidence, and this resulted in some very underwhelming sales figures when new, and this has led to some pretty significant depreciation on the used market. Brand new, these things were ranging anywhere from about $35,000 to $40,000 depending on the year and trim spec. Right now, you can get one for anywhere from $12,000 to about $20,000. Now look, obviously there's so much more to the CRZ in terms of trim specs and specific details. If you do need all of those details, head to ReDriven.com and check out the completely free CRZ cheat sheet. It is the ultimate CRZ buyer's guide, and it's going to answer all of your questions. Now, when it comes to common issues and complaints inside, you know what? Hardly any. A few owners have complained that some of the dash buttons can yellow and fade over time. This silvery chromy finish can scratch pretty easily. And the glove box and this little storage compartment up here, apparently they can get stuck closed and the plastics can get a bit brittle, and some of the parts can be a little bit on the expensive side to replace and fix that stuff. But besides that, that's about it for complaints and common issues. Oh, and obviously with the age of these cars, plenty of owners complain that the standard infotainment systems absolutely suck now. Even the reversing camera on this car, I'm pretty sure they've used a camera off like one of the Charlie Chaplin sets. That's easily fixed though. If you want Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and modern levels of Bluetooth connectivity, there are plenty of aftermarket kits available. Actually, just on the owners, it's interesting, for a car that didn't sell in really big numbers, there are quite a few owners groups and forums. We actually joined loads of them to do the research for this video, and they were so helpful. Especially a huge thank you to Joe Clark and Justin Herman. Actually, Justin put a list together of a whole bunch of lesser known CRZ facts. If you're in the market for one of these, go and read it. We've added a link below. But you two, thank you guys so much. And another link that is down there is going to get you 15% off and free express shipping on a set of awesome Wipertech wiper blades. Wipertech blades feature a completely frameless design, and it's got Teflon infused natural rubber, so they're going to wipe like you won't believe. And ordering them and fitting them is a breeze. And as a massive thank you to the absolute legend Paul that has lent us his CRZ, he's going home with a set of these bad boys for free. If you want a set for free and you've got a cool car and you live in Sydney or Newcastle, let us know in the comments, or better yet, message us on the socials, and if we film it, you're gonna get a set for free. Now, another issue that a few owners mentioned was that some of the lighter colored fabrics can stain really easily. As delicious as, say, coffee and chocolate is as a combination, don't spill that on the lighter colored fabrics because it's near impossible to get out. I should mention, besides the scratchy chrome plastics and the lighter colored fabrics staining really easy, a lot of owners did mention just how resilient these interiors are. For example, in this car, it's got over 90,000 Ks on it from 2013. Steering wheel still has a bit of texture to it. The leather still feels pretty good. It's a little bit squeaky in places, but all the plastics are wearing really nicely. Pretty good for wear and tear. Aside from that, and apparently against popular opinion, I personally love the design of this interior. First of all, the seating position is excellent. You sit so low and hunkered down in the car, it kind of wraps around you. One small ergonomic thing, but the actual screen is so far away. Like, I'm pretty tall and that's a full arm length to get to. If you're short, that's going to be a challenge. And also, I agree with a lot of the owners that the seats themselves could be more supportive. In fact, plenty of owners have hunted down the optional Recaro seats that came in the Japanese CRZs. That would make a hell of a difference. But the way the overall design works, I absolutely love. It's clear there's a driver's cockpit here, and it's just intuitive to use. And just the way the buttons and all the switchgear works and feels, it doesn't feel old. It feels like a current car. And just design-wise, again, I feel like this is what they thought back in the late noughties what the future would look like. So it's kind of retro, but in a neutro retro kind of way. Also, even though it does come really well equipped with features and equipment, if you have no plans on updating the infotainment system, try to find one of the later or higher spec models with the sat-nav included. That way you're going to get the terrible reversing camera and parking sensors, and they are imperative to have, as you'll find out when we show you what this thing is like to drive. And then as far as using the interior for practicality, for a little sports car, pretty bloody good. You've got a pretty average size glove box, but there is more storage on top of the dash just there. You've got a spot really well sized for your phone just there, and 2 cup holders, and they have little flappy bits, so they do hold small pretentious coffees like a double macchiato. You can also put your phone under the handbrake just there. Another cup holder here, little storage tray that's just going to collect dust and crap. Door bins, but they're pretty small. More spots for dust and crap just there. Another spot for your phone here. Just there, no spot for sunglasses, nothing under the seats. That's pretty good practicality for a car this size. And then in the back seat, I'm exactly 6 centimeters taller than former Honda Formula One driver and absolute legend Jenson Button. This is in my driving position, and as you can see, incredibly spacious back here. No, it's obviously not. This is ridiculous. I get that this car has back seats. Why? Even kids back here would have to have no legs to fit. As far as features and practicality back here, yeah, none. I just want to get out of here because this is so uncomfortable. And then as far as practicality in the boot goes, with the rear seats in place, it's not a bad level of practicality back here. But when you put the seats down, actually pretty spacious. It makes me wonder, does it have back seats purely for some kind of legislation issue? Because this makes so much more sense than having these stupid, pathetic seats. And then as far as the safety features that you can expect, well, to make this section of the video more entertaining, how about we cut to the most frustrating video you're ever going to watch this week with a snappy graphic at the bottom. Okay, when it comes to common complaints and faults when it comes to the driving experience, the first big one is the vision out the back and the blind spots, or the lack thereof. These blind spots are massive, and because you've got this funky design at the back, seeing straight out the back can be a bit of a challenge. It's like you've got an enormous rear wing. But aside from that, the big complaint you're going to get, mainly from non-CRZ people, is just how underpowered these are, and apparently they're really, really slow. But here's the thing. The second generation CRX of the late 80s, early 90s that everyone raves about, including the likes of Jeremy Clarkson and Chris Harris, they adore that car. It was not a fast thing. It was pretty slow. In fact, and excluding the Japanese-only SIR models, that car's acceleration times are pretty much on par with this. But for me, oddly, that's a good thing because it gives you more time to appreciate what this car is absolutely brilliant at, and that's cornering. Also, this car is, again, somewhat the spiritual successor to that CRX, but it feels so much more than just skin deep and just aesthetics. This feels like what the original engineers of the CRX would have wanted the car to feel like 20 years on. But just back to the power thing really quickly, where this beats the original CRX and is actually really impressive in terms of acceleration, flick it into Sport, then this S Plus button, and the mid-gear acceleration is way more than you're expecting. Sure, off the line it might not be the fastest thing out there, but mid-gear it's pretty impressive. And then there's this steering, which is so incredibly good. And because the car's so short and the wheelbase is quite short, when you turn in, it feels like the whole car is pivoting about where your bum is. And this makes it feel engaging and is fun to steer, even if you're just pulling out of your driveway. But what all of that means is that you get to enjoy all of the fun of driving a proper performance car, but at under the speed limit, so therefore you're going to keep your license intact, hopefully. And then another advantage is this hybrid setup. This thing doesn't have any of the anxiety that comes along with the knowledge that your twin turbo hundreds of horsepower V8 is just guzzling dozens and dozens of litres of fuel every single second. However, the very observant of you will notice that this car has a CVT, which is arguably the less driver-focused of the transmission options available. And look, yes, I'm sure changing gears by yourself would be hugely more engaging and potentially far more fun, but I can't believe I'm about to say this. This CVT is actually pretty good, especially in sport mode with the manual paddle shifts. It's a pretty good thing for a CVT. Plus, it's just so much easier to live with for the daily commute. Also, according to those in the know, the manual has one of the best shift feels of all time. Also, I was expecting this interior to sound pretty rattly, all the brittle plastics and whatnot, but it doesn't. It actually sounds really, really tight. Unfortunately, the CVT gearbox whine in normal and eco mode is a bit, but flick it into sport and it's great. Look, overall, I think personally the biggest issue the CRZ has in terms of the driving experience is that It's the expectations that people put on the car, which are expectations that the car was never intended to deliver in the first place. If you just stop wanting it to have a bigger engine and more performance and just appreciate what this car is so brilliant at, this thing is a phenomenal driving package. It's completely unique and I bloody love driving it. That is until you've got to see out the back of it or check a blind spot because they're terrible. Actually, speaking of terrible, CVTs have a shocking reputation for reliability, and this is a pretty complex system with the hybrid and everything going on. So mechanically, what goes wrong with them? Unfortunately, I can't answer that question because I'm not a qualified mechanic. Sorry, corners are so fun. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Okay, mechanically speaking, overall, yes, they are actually pretty reliable. In the engine bay, you do see a few EGR complications. Sometimes that can be fixed with just a clean out. Other times a whole EGR valve needs to be replaced. And like a lot of modern day engines, they do suffer from oil dilution, and that's where just particulates and unburnt fuel just goes down past the pistons and ends up in the sump and basically dilutes the engine oil. It's a pretty common problem. Now, for that reason, it's a really good idea just to stay on top of the services because diluted oil is not good. Now, in the engine bay, there are a couple of electrical issues that are not related to the hybrid system. The first one is there's a few ground points or earth leads where they connect the engine to the body and to the ECU to the body and the battery to the body. Some of those get corrosion underneath the bolts and they have to be taken off and cleaned. In some cases, that corrosion can generate heat and those cables can actually melt down. So that's a pretty common problem. Now, the conventional 12-volt battery in these, that's charged by the hybrid system. Now, they're chasing maximum efficiency here, so what they tend to do is only just charge it enough to keep that to a normal level. And what people are finding that it isn't charged enough, and sometimes the life of those batteries is shortened because they're never really charged properly. And that can be exacerbated by the poor ground situation as well. Now, the earlier versions of the Honda hybrid systems, they actually used a nickel metal hydride battery. Now, they did have a lot of issues with durability and longevity and self-discharging complications as well. And they also don't like extreme heat or extreme cold. In some cases back then, Honda were doing extended warranties. Now, the good news is in the later versions, they did have a lithium-ion battery, which is way more stable and much more reliable. Now, the IMA system, that's the integrated motor assist, look, that tends to log a lot of fault codes and it's very sensitive, and anything electrical that glitches will probably log a fault code with the IMA system. Things like clutch position sensors, the actual 12-volt battery, which we talked about earlier, and the IMA cooling system as well. It's got a fan that blows on there, which is also a pretty common problem. Look out for all of those. They're always logging fault codes. I should mention all of those common problems are actually fairly easy to fix. Now, the IPU, that's the integrated power unit. That's just basically the battery and the inverters and the AC drivers. They are generally pretty reliable, but as I said earlier, they have a cooling fan and that is their biggest downfall. If that fan is problematic, they overheat. When they overheat, they fail. Now, the CVT transmission in these generally is okay. You have to keep on top of the services and it's highly recommended that you use the genuine Honda oil. There has been cases where inferior oil has been used and the transmissions fail. As for the manual transmissions, and I'm pretty sure these are the only hybrid that ever had a manual, which is kind of cool. The transmission itself is pretty good. Higher mileage versions that haven't been serviced, or ones that have been given a bit of a hard time, and there are plenty of those around, I can tell you, the synchros do tend to play up. It'll just crunch into second and third. Now, overall, yes, they are pretty reliable, but there is a lot more in these that can go wrong compared to a non-hybrid Honda. And look, basically also, they are actually not as reliable as a Toyota hybrid. So if that's what you're in the market for, just consider that.
There's one other issue with the CRZ that we haven't touched on yet, and it's what else you can buy for this kind of money. If we're talking small, sporty 2 or 3 door hatchback / coupe things, 12,000 to 20,000 Aussie dollars can get you into everything from the Ford Fiesta ST to the Volkswagen Scirocco, maybe an Abarth 595 or Hyundai Veloster, and of course the Toyo Baru twins, the 86 and BRZ. Not to mention a whole host of other BMW, Audi, Renault and Peugeot options. But no matter what car you're looking at, if you're looking to finance it, do yourself a favour and hit that driver link down below. Driver will source you the best possible finance package customised to suit your needs. There are no hidden fees, plus applying is quick, easy and completely free. But the thing is, as tempting as so much of the competition is, none of those cars are anywhere near as unique as this thing. In the right set of hands, the CRZ is just as entertaining as the majority of others, yet it will potentially cost you less in fuel and running costs. It's practical for what it is. There are far fewer on our roads, so it's more exclusive. It's a Honda, so the build quality and reliability are excellent. And even visually, nothing else looks like a CRZ. Should you buy one? As long as you've found an example that checks out with all the critical pre-purchase inspection stuff, yes, absolutely you should. Actually, you know what, look, I know this is a huge call, but with how ahead of its time the CRZ is, could this be a genuine future classic? But before you go running out to buy one, there is another criminally underrated car in this category that you really should check out first. It's this. But if you weren't to buy this or this, what would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. This era, they can get milky. Oh my God, no.
Yeah, what a funny little car. Wait, sorry, take two. Yeah, what a funny little nugget. No?
Right now, they range anywhere from, here we go.